Well, for more than 15 years, a Toronto-based conservation photojournalist has been taking pictures of the last wild places on Earth. Neil Ever Osborne is now presenting his work at his first fine art exhibit called Home. Neil joins us on set to talk about it today. Neil, these are beautiful pieces. You're just showing me a little bit of them today. Falkland Islands, northern BC. What is the place that has captured your imagination?
You know, it's been a really long 15 years, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to show the work. We've been all over the place. We've been to Indonesia, we've been to the Falkland Islands, we've been to Ecuador, we've been to the northern Pacific coast of British Columbia, Canada, and I like working here in Canada. It's one of my favorite places to be doing the work.
Wow, and what is the place in all of those travels that you feel needs the most help?
You know, I concentrate on the edges and the peripheral of where people and planet mix. That's the area where I think we need to spend the most of our time documenting, to tell this story to folks and to bring it back home, to tell people what's important about nature.
Is there a place where that people and planet link come together that you're just like, people in the world need to pay attention to this place?
You know, here in Canada, we really do truly see this story unfolding in British Columbia, where the First Nations are getting a chance to finally share their voices. Ecotourism is a big story on the coast, and we're learning how people and planet can coexist on that coast there. So, yeah, it's really special stories unfolding here in Canada.
I want to ask about being behind the lens. Of course, you're seeing our beautiful world, but you're also seeing in many ways, ways that we are ruining it at times. So what is that like as a photographer, being behind the camera?
There's a lot of doom and gloom we hear, and so what I'm trying to do with Home and the fine art exhibit is to talk about the environment and nature in a different way. In fact, we want to try to replace the idea of environment with a whole new concept. And when you hear the word home, when you see the word home, it connotes, it suggests a different feeling. And so that's what we want to do with this body of work, talk about the environment in a different way, make it more relatable, and perhaps make it more accessible too.
Yeah, Neil, what are people saying? Because I know the exhibit is going to come to life here in Toronto, but I'm sure some friends and family and people have seen your work. I mean, is there a resonance point there with the word home?
You know, it's working. We tested it before we launched, and since opening the show, we're finding it's working. It's that universal word that everyone can relate to, and it speaks to all of us in so many different ways. We opened last night at Berenson Fine Art here in Toronto.
Okay.
It was a packed crowd, and yeah, the conversation's just starting. It's just starting.
What is the greatest, I mean, part for you of being able, because you're kind of merging two worlds here, right? Photography and conservation. What is the greatest part for you?
You know, it's a new term still for a lot of people, this concept of conservation photography. It's taking nature photography, it's taking documentary photography, it's combining those two, and then it's putting images to work. So what do we do with our images once they're on the hard drive? Once we've got them on our computer, what do we do with the images next? And so this is one example of what conservation photographers to do. I've put together a body of work, presented as fine art, and we're trying to talk to different audiences. We're trying to make this more relatable. This conversation that's difficult, how do we make it more relatable?
So Neil, let's talk about this beautiful penguin behind us. I mean, how would you make this relatable to our viewers at home?
Yeah, I mean, glad you asked, because this is a king penguin in the Falkland Islands. We entitled the image On My Way Home. And in some ways, it's a self-portrait or a self-reflection of all of us. We're always on our way home. At the end of the day, we all want to go back home. And so therein lies this really universal feeling you get when we're attached to home, when we're thinking of home. And that's how we got to think about the environment. That's how we have to think about nature.
It's a beautiful way to say it. And let's talk quickly about the other piece here.
So this is an aerial perspective I took while in a Cessna, and this is in northern British Columbia. It's a great example, too, of how we're trying to recast or change the conversation. We first wanted to call this fine print Divided Home, but that's the negative way of looking at things. And so instead, we've called this Loving Home, paying particular attention to the shape of the forest. And in doing so, I think we've shifted the energy, the tone of this conversation. We're trying to be more positive about this. There's so many places left to celebrate. There's so many places that are still pristine. Let's protect them, and let's think more about our only shared home.
Neil, I like your approach. Very positive. It's a great way for people to interact with the environment. Neil Ever Osborne's exhibit is now open at Berenson Fine Art in Toronto, and it runs until May 31st. Thanks for sharing your passion.
Yeah, you bet.